Hello everyone. Hello. Now, tonight's video is going to be a fun one. Tonight's video is going to be a very fun one because, honestly, it's one of the topics which you can present in one of two ways. You can do a very dry presentation, or you can try for a fun one, and I think I do it in a fun way. So that's what I'm going for. I am going for a fun way on Operation Deadlight. Please note, not Deadbeat. Good. The system's opening up questions. Things are hopefully working. That's good. We're open to taking questions. It's always a worry. It is always a worry. With that being said, hello everyone. Welcome to Operation Deadlight, the scuttling of U-boats, and today is the anniversary of the last aforementioned scuttling of a U-boat. The last one. Now, I have to start off with a bit of a thing, and I know Dan F might well be watching, and I'm going to give him some good news. So, as you all know, I've been working quite a lot in the loft. And before anyone asks, my mum's fine. Barring the nosebleeds, which is why she keeps ending up having to go to hospital with nosebleeds, because she has quite severe ones at the moment. She's fine. I have also developed a bit of a cough. And I was worried with the pneumonia because it was a nice, deep, chesty cough that I was actually going to be in trouble. And I'm not going to be in trouble at all. I'm not at all in trouble because what it turned out to be is I've got a load of the wool fibre on the back of my throat. And there is a reason I have a bottle of Iron Brew here. Because I was told by my doctor that I need to drink more fizzy drinks to dislodge it and that'll stop me coughing. So, please note, this is medically prescribed Iron Brew. It is a health drink tonight. I am medically prescribed to drink as much Iron Brew as I can in the next couple of days to try and clean up my throat. So, Dr. Dan, it is now a medicine. It's a health drink. I did love my doctor's face though, because this is my GP's face. He does know me well. He was basically going, so you need to drink. Oh, so water? Well, no, actually, the best thing to drink to dislodge it is going to be a fizzy liquid. So you mean I have to drink Iron Brew? And the poor man, the literal drip of fear from his face as he went, yeah, I cannot believe I'm doing this with you. You're never gonna let me forget this. Yes, drink Iron Brew. Drink as much as you can over the next 3 days and come back and see me Monday and your throat will probably be clear. So, medically prescribed Iron Brew. I am a happy, happy man. Oh. Now, tonight's one is going to be a fun one because, there are ways to start this topic off. There are, believe it or not. And usually people dive straight into diplomacy. I tend to not. I tend to dive straight into the operation which preceded Deadlight. And I do love the fact that you can tell this was named by the Royal Navy, okay? You can tell it was named by the Royal Navy. Because automatically, it is given a weird name. You can always tell when something is named by the Royal Navy because it is given a weird name. It is something which sounds completely wrong for it to be named that way. Yeah, it was named by the Royal Navy. So, yeah. today is a good day. And this operation, though, starts off with Operation Regenbogen. Ah, yes, Regenbogen! Now, this was the ultimate operation. It was the plan to deny the Allies getting the crown jewels of Germany's defense industry, so they would not be able to succor from the teat of the German labor. So they wouldn't be able to get all the knowledge and all the information. Unfortunately for the Germans, by the time they're actually considering this in April, May 1945, the Royal Navy and various other sections of the British intelligence services, and I'm fairly sure fairly large sections of the Soviets and American intelligence services, are well tapped into them. I mean, they have fastened on that they are not letting go. They are getting every bit of information they can from that. Every drop of information they will succor on. And, well, that's a problem for the Germans. You see, I think the Germans were all right planning when they thought they were going to have a 1,000-year Reich, and they were doing all sorts of stupid things in terms of what they were putting their money into and their time into. And let's be honest, if you want to talk about wasted effort, then you can't get more wasted effort than the Holocaust. In the nicest way, if you're going to use it as slave labor, use it as slave labor. Don't then kill it. This is beyond all the very abundant and painfully obvious moral reasons for not doing it, and moral and ethical reasons not to do the Holocaust. It's actually stupid economics. This is one of my problems with people sometimes when they're talking about Nazi Germany. They seem to think they're actually good at something, and as far as I can see, it's dreaming up wonder weapons they don't actually manage to build properly, the vast majority of them, and being very bad at economics, repeatedly. In fact, they make a worse job of economics than Napoleon, and he is terrible. Napoleon believes the only things you should tax are things you can see. That's a bit of a problem. Hitler seems to believe if he wishes for an economy, he'll get an economy. But, yes, basically the Germans had plans for how they were going to get rid of their boats. Basically, they were supposed to scuttle themselves. The order was supposed to go out and they were supposed to scuttle themselves. Now, this was mainly going to go to the boats in harbour, but the boats at sea were also supposed to do it. If they could get to somewhere neutral and scuttle there, great. If they couldn't get to somewhere neutral, then theoretically they're supposed to scuttle in the middle of the ocean. Now, if anyone's wondering, there might be a reason why that many of the U-boat crews didn't feel like that. Because think about it from the point of view of survival. If you scuttle your U-boat in the middle of the ocean and you get into a life raft, especially a World War II vintage life raft, how likely are you to survive getting to shore? Yes, even the Soviets did work out that dead slaves couldn't work. It took them a disturbingly long amount of time to do it, but they did work it out eventually. Are you trying to help them by saying they could doggy paddle? Yes, but even that's not really going to help them much against the Atlantic where most of them are operating. Let's be honest, doggy paddle is not good against waves that size. As adoring as you can look, that isn't going to help. Okay. I'll give you a biscuit. You wouldn't get one for that amount of effort on life raft. Raft trap. Don't forget the backstabbing. They were all worse than that. Oh, yes, they were. Oh. But anyway, Operation Regenbogen mostly turned into, and this is the real problem for this, I would say for the Germans, into a massacre of the home fleet, the home submarines, not the front submarines. The trouble is, though, for them, the home submarines are quite a lot of them being killed as well. You see, the Allies start to detect where they're all running to, and they start to put their various frigates and sloops and destroyers and hunter-killer groups in the paths of where they think the submarines are going. Honestly, at a certain point in World War II, the Allies stopped trying to hide Enigma. They really do. If anyone had been paying attention on the German side and actually had a ounce of intelligence going on, they'd have gone, hang on, how is it the Allies know we're withdrawing all our boats at this point along these paths to get to Norway? How? And how do they happen to have quite so many escorts in their path? It's amazing. You know, you have to be amazed at it. It's just, the odds are so against it. Now, admittedly, you could convince yourself that, the Allies were doing an odds analysis, that they were going, well, the war's not going well, you'll probably withdraw it, and if you withdraw your vessels, they'll probably withdraw them to the ports you can get to. They're mostly going to be in Norway, so that's where you're going to withdraw your boats to. The only part of the German Empire they were remotely planning on holding on to was actually Norway. It's one of the really interesting things. Norwegians aren't keen on the idea of the Germans hanging around, and they're doing their very best to get rid of them. But unfortunately, and this is the problem for Norway, is that it's really not set up for that kind of situation at that point. They're withdrawing. Great. They do well. They mostly run into, as said, Allied surface escorts, which basically go, hello. And then there are, of course, the various German boats which are trying to escape from Germany and run to other places in the world, which Royal Navy submarines are leading the offensive against. But yes, that is when we get the only confirmed undersea kill of a submarine killing another submarine. And please note, I would like it known forevermore, that is the toughest kill ever carried out by a submarine on a submarine, no matter what happens in the future. Because at that point, they had no fire control which could assist them with underwater solutions. Had to do it entirely on their heads. None of the really fancy computers and systems we have for passive gear these days. None of the fancy torpedoes we have, which have homing capabilities at all. No, it's a dumb torpedo, which they're pretty much firing. And they managed to sink it. Okay? There will never be an underwater kill from submarine on submarine as difficult as that. As literally the person doing the maths in their head. You will never get a kill like that ever again. If you do, so much has gone frigating wrong, there is an honest question as to what's going on here. Honest question. So here's the outline of Regelmoggen. And Regelmoggen is one of those operations which, frankly, you're honestly surprised it actually manages to take place. Donitz is simultaneously trying to negotiate, trying to make the German Navy survive, trying to make Germany survive, trying to do everything. Honestly, at this point, Donitz is probably the last vestige of sensible leadership that's in Germany. And please note, when I use the phrase sensible and leadership in context of Donitz, I am being very, very specific about this circumstance. We are talking about a man who thought that by doing a unipolar attack on the British, Britain, he could actually win a conflict. And the fact is, his carrying on with that attack and not saying, look, this is not possible to Hitler. Now, you can understand why he didn't say it was possible to Hitler, because of, well, fear of getting himself posted to the Eastern Front, probably. The fact is, it's just never possible. as I explained before, every time someone comes up and goes, well, if the Germans had just concentrated on submarines from about 1937, they could have beaten the Royal Navy. You sit there and go, no, they couldn't, because that would mean the Royal Navy would just focus on building a large number of escorts from 1937, which they were already doing, and the Royal Navy could build escorts a lot faster and a lot more quicker than the Germans could build submarines. And honestly, if the Germans aren't building capital ships and cruisers and even destroyers, they're just building submarines, they can't get Norway. And if they can't get Norway, they won't get a base in Norway, which will really degrade the North Atlantic campaign. And actually, again, it just makes everything better for the Royal Navy. So, no, it doesn't work. So, they start doing the planning for Operational Loggenbogen, and there is a debate as to when it starts planning, but my sincere theory is it really starts properly in April. And at the point when they're planning it, only the Prince Jürgen, which is in Copenhagen, realistically survives and is capable of operation. And only the roughly 470 U-boats that remain were actually viable. There were roughly 170 of those 470 U-boats were actually operational grade. Operating primarily from Norway, and 200 were home-based, and that meant they could be in commissioning, working up, building, or could also be decommissioned and being used as training boats or other non-operational tasks. There were a fair number of boats in the home boat selection, which frankly would never be allowed to go out to sea ever again, because the thing is, as I've said before, submarines don't have a life expectancy, they have a dive life expectancy. Okay? Now, even that dive life expectancy isn't guaranteed. You watch the hull every time you launch it. Every time the hull goes out and comes back, you go and you look at it and go, okay, what's happened? And if they develop fractures, if they develop too many problems, you have a decision. You either start cutting them up and trying to fix them, but remember, every time you cut a hull open, you introduce new points of potential failure. Or you deactivate them and use them pier side, or dock side, or wharf side, whatever you want to call it, and tie them up and use them for training the shore compartments. Those are your options. That happens more with earlier submarines. One of the troubles Donitz has with U-boats is the quality of construction throughout the war, and how much time service they can do. This is one of the things that often amazes me, but you can tell who's writing the histories versus who isn't. Okay, so I will often read books written from the economic history perspective, which will talk about the speed of U-boat construction and the quantity of U-boats. That's lovely. And that does have an effect on operational considerations. But if your U-boat goes out, comes back from one patrol and is no longer viable, that's not really good. That's not really good. Realistically, you want a U-boat that can go out and come back and, all things being considered, and no enemy action interceding to prevent them actually returning, them do at least 10 to 12 patrols in the war. You need them to be doing that many to maintain the operational numbers. Every U-boat which is less than 10 is causing you issues. And that's me going by a very rough estimate. I did that a few years ago. I did some maths and came out to roughly, it's between 10 and 12. And you might go, why didn't you pick to 11? Well, it depends on the type of U-boat. Okay? Some, they need to do 10 to justify the numbers in existence. Some, it's 12. Believe it or not, the bigger, the fancier, the more expensive the boat it is, the more patrols it needs to do to justify its existence. And yes, the home boats did include some of the failed super build boats that had interesting tolerances. And yes, they did have to rebuild a number of the boats when delivered. Sometime, right. It's it's just a really really weird time. Now the scuttling actually starts, it seems, on May the 1st. And they start to scuttle the boats which they think they're not going to be. They really don't want to fall into the Allies' hands, or the ones they can before they scuttle them before they think they do fall into the Allies' hands. And it starts off on May the 1st with 3 scuttled at Warnemund. Then on May the 2nd, 32 are scuttled at Travemund. So you've got 35 scuttled now. On May the 3rd, another 32 are scuttled at Kiel and 7 more at Hamburg. And that tells you where the major numbers are being held and what they're doing there for. But that does now have us up to a whopping 74. On May the 4th, Montgomery. Montgomery has been put in charge of basically taking the surrender of the Germans in the naval areas. And Montgomery, acting for the Allies, with Eisenhower's consent and Churchill's prodding, insists that German naval forces, and I do want to point out Churchill's prodding, but, well, look at the dates in May 1945. Acting for the Allies, German naval forces, including the U-boat arm, he be surrendered, insists that the German naval forces, including the U-boat arm, be surrendered complete. They could not be... there are various phrases that are used to describe what he's sort of declaring. One in book, including says that he requested the vessels be left unmolested. We'll leave that offer to one side. The ruling, though, wouldn't come in place till around 0800s, as on the 5th of May. And so 2 more in Kiel and 2 at Flensburg were actually scuttled on May the 4th. And Donat seems to be deciding what he should do. And some jiggery-pokery takes place. Some really fun jiggery-pokery. On May the 5th, in the early hours, the order for Ruggenbogen is issued. And then about 8 minutes later, it's countermanded in order to prevent it. Jeopardizing negotiations. However, even with this, and this is considering the fact that there have already been 78 boats scuttled, a further 87 are scuttled in Gelting Bay, Flensburg, Wilhelmshaven, West Street, and others. So think about this. More boats are scuttled in those 8 minutes on May the 5th, theoretically, than are scuttled in the entire run-up of May the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, when there's a countermandel supposed to going out. Anyone think someone's covering their behind? Yes, the order was sent out by a junior officer. By mistake, we have disciplined him. It was his act of national fury and righteousness on the failure of the motherland to fall to these impunious allies, these non-Aryans, and we countermanded it as soon as we could. But unfortunately, some of our officers were far too eager to avoid the dishonor that they experienced in World War I. Sometimes it just happens, but yes. 87 are destroyed in less than now, when in the few days they've destroyed 78, I mean. Literally the numbers split around. And well, it carries on. On May the 7th, 2 more of the Type 17 boats, the Volta boats, are wrecked at Cuxhaven. Wrecked, please note. It was an accident. It was an accident. All those who believe it was an accident, please say I in the chat. All those who find that the accident was slightly disbelievable, say nay in the chat. So you can put I, as in EYE, or nay, as in NAY. Or NEY. You can spell it both ways. Nays are flooding in. I may have introduced you to the world of being cynical far too much. So yeah. Now the thing is, on the 8th of May, there are 150 vessels left to surrender the Allies. 52 of which are at sea. 98 were in harbour. These are the 150 boats which surrendered to the Allies. Mostly they came into Norway and Germany, some Denmark, even France, and some of course came into the UK, Gibraltar, various places, but mostly it's Norway. 2 Type 7C boats fled to Portugal, that's U1277 and U963, and they're scuttled by their crews off Porto. So that's a sensible routing to my mind. 2 more, and this is where you get a lot of the whole ideas about various people fleeing to Argentina. 2 more vessels, U530, a Type 9C, and U977, a Type 7C, made it to Mar del Plata in Argentina, where they were interned, of course, by the members of the Allies that were Argentina at the time. Thing is, though, and this is where things get really interesting for us all. The 195 boats scuttled, 184 are home boats. Remember what I said at the beginning about home versus front? Well, they're home boats, non-operational. Only 11 of the boats scuttled were front boats, and those had all been damaged in what's known as the May Massacre, when boats had tried to flee through Allied forces in Norway. And remember, the fleeing happens in the first few days of May. So yeah, it's up to you whether you can judge Regenbogen a success or not. It certainly does deal with a lot of boats, but to my mind, it also makes the Allies' job a little bit easier because it damages enough boats that it stops there being a huge number which could be taken over, even on paper, which you might have to deal with. It also, how do I put this politely? Means the Allies don't have to deal with those boats themselves. Because the thing is, even if those boats were in bad nick, the Allies would still have to turn them away from Germany, because the whole thing was they wanted Germany to be disarmed. They didn't want any risk of them being able to activate and use anything. They didn't want any Hail Marys going on. They didn't want anyone escaping on a U-boat. They didn't want anything like that happening. And it's kind of useful. Again, though, Verdun, yes, there are a surprisingly large number of the better examples of the Type 21s and Type 23s which survive. It's amazing. In fact, when we get onto the boat which we are actually on the anniversary of, because it was sunk on the 12th of February 1946, So exactly 80 years ago today, yeah, that is, believe it or not, one of the fancy boats. That the last boat to survive. Strangely enough, for the British to sink, the last boat is one of their fancy ones. It's amazing. You know? Who'd have thought it that a Type 21 would be the last boat to be sunk? That it survived the longest. And that being said, though, let's have a look at why there were so many left before we get on to what were left. Now, why are there so many left? Why are there 150 boats left? Well, partially because they're often the ones which were out operational. And as I said, they don't want to kill themselves. It's one thing to fight for the motherland, fatherland, whatever you want to call your nation. It's quite another thing to kill yourself for. Fighting runs the risk of dying, but it also runs the risk of living. So that's a good balance of risk. Killing yourself only runs the risk of killing yourself, and it's rather not so much a risk as a certainty. And let's be honest, these things aren't the greatest things to be on an Atlantic storm, let alone if you decide to start poking holes in them and go out in a life raft. 80 years, Dr. Chandlerlord. It's 80 years ago today that vessel was sunk. 12th of February, 1946. They start sinking for Operation Deadlight in May 1945. They finish sinking them in February 1946. Again, it's all some fun history. Yeah, 8 years. If they survived till 8 years ago, I'd be a little bit surprised. That would also be a little bit interesting. And it would mean there'll be some interesting vessels around for us to have a good look at. Some really interesting vessels for us to have a good look at. KVG, it's not even a kamikaze action. Yeah, no. There's no redeeming things from it. So, you're going to try and make the port. And there's a limited number of ports you can get to. And most of them make to Norway. I can't think why, in this scenario, the vast majority are making their way to Norway. You'll be seeing that in a bit. But the trouble is, Norway doesn't last as long as they think it's going to be. They think it's going to be a negotiational bit. It's going to be something they can, negotiate the resources in, etc. and things. They don't get that. The Reich, including the Reich in Norway, collapses very, very quickly at a certain point. And then what more is there left to? You're basically... If you destroy these boats, you are going to make yourself guilty of destruction of property which belongs to the Allies, and these are the things which are buying you your freedom. If you act honourably, you might get home. You won't get to prisoner of war camps. There are officers sitting there looking, and especially, you have to remember again, there are officers who did serve in the First World War in the German Navy. There are officers from the Kaiserlich Marine in the Kriegsmarine still. There are enough of them passing on their experience and their knowledge, going, look, if we're going to get out of this, we need to play it straight. We can't muck around. Because there are ways. You can be taken prisoner by a nice Royal Navy officer, or you can be taken prisoner by the Canadians. You have a choice. The Canadians won't do anything to you. You're fairly sure they won't do anything to you, but you're not 100% sure they won't do anything to you because you know their reputation. The Canadians are honourable, right? They're nice people, right? But what did they get? Then there's the whole Geneva Conventions, which are mostly what they did to people. But they surely don't do that to prisoners. But do we know they don't do it to prisoners? And the thing is, this is the real fun point, is this is one of the problems you have with propaganda. If you spend too much time with your propaganda demonizing your opponents, then when it comes time to surrender to them, if you have to, your people are going to be scared stiff of them. You start doing the work of your enemy. You start making the enemy out to be the boogeyman, to be powerful, scary, worrying. And see, the thing is, this is one of the interesting things of propaganda. You have to be careful. If you keep repeating that the enemy is somehow this evil killing machine, good example, this is the Argentinians in the Falklands War. They made it out so that the Gurkhas were considered such scary mercenaries because the British were so evil, bringing such evil mercenaries there. They didn't realise they built the Gurkhas up in the minds of the average Argentinian conscript to be these super warriors. And then the Gurkhas, of course, played into it. They had that lovely picture go around the world of them sharpening kukris and all the other things. And they played into it. Well, guess what? The Canadians are good at playing into this too. The Germans have spent a large chunk of World War II telling everyone that the reason that the British, when they get the Canadians to come over, the Canadians empty out their prisons and bring out all the nastiest people that they can find in Canada across to become their crack infantry formations. They don't realise it's not that. They don't do that at all. They literally just take the people off who are normally driving on the roads in Canada and bring them across. That's fine. You stick a nice Canadian in a steel box, you have them drive on a road, you soon suddenly realise that they think they turn into an ice hockey player. The moment they get any protection and padding over their body, they believe they're an ice hockey player and they believe they have to get that puck. But the thing is, you have that, the Germans become very persuaded to start going, okay, we're going to hand over these ships. We're going to make sure they survive, because they're going to buy us our freedom and stop us having to deal with them. Propaganda, it's a two-edged sword. Killerman, how much the scrap value would the U-boats have been worth? Not a lot. At the end of World War II, there's a lot of scrap coming onto the market. A lot of scrap coming onto the market. Nice hearing. Weren't a number of non-German built submarines among the vessels the Germans scuttled? Yes, but submarines are called boats, not ships. There is a reason for this. Was driving in Canada really that bad? Look, I was fine with the driving. My colleagues were traumatized. But yes, visiting Haida was fun. All I will say is this, is the motorways that go from Toronto to Hamilton, Ontario. Those are roads which have to be experienced to understand them. They have to be experienced to understand them. It's quite fun. Certainly stimulating. So, let's consider the boats are surrendered. And we're going to look at first, this is Germany. And by the way, I just want to give you a heads up. This is Germany we're looking at boats which are surrendered. Then this is Norway. And this is Norway. And then we have the Shameless Book Plug. And you can guess if Norway continues after the Shameless Book Plug. Now, there are a lot of boats. A lot of boats. As you can see, most of them surrender in Cuxhaven. Then there's Helgeland. But there's a few others spread around. There's a couple in Kiel. There's Emden, Flensburg, List in Silt. All these ones. They are an interesting collection of boats. The vast majority of them, you'll soon see when you look through the list, are Type 7s. But there's also Type 3Ds. There are some Type 17s in Cuxhaven. We do worry about 17s. They surrendered on the 5th of May. Just want to remember that on the 7th of May, two water boats wrecked at Cuxhaven. There are 2 Type 7Bs in Cuxhaven in the surrender list. U1406 and U1407. There's also a Type 23 in there. A couple of them, in fact, a couple at Cuxhaven, one at Flensburg, and another one sitting in Kiel, along with a Type 21 at Kiel. But mostly, you get a good idea of what the German war effort was about. When it came to submarines, it was Type 7s. But again, these are home fleet ships. These really are home fleet ships. None of these ships are ships which are going off to war anytime soon. They are home fleet assets. Then we go to Norway. And once it gets there, the list gets intriguing. And when I say intriguing, I mean... well, these are vessels which were either working up to become part of the front fleet or were front fleet. And again, you start going through it and you go, well, Bergen is Type 7Cs and Type 9s. Has older vessels as well. An interesting older vessel, UD5. But mostly you're looking at, when you're talking about the 21s and even 23, they mostly start, they are, how do I put this? They're few. They're very few in comparison to the rest of the force. In fact, most of the Type 21s on this page, they're at Horten. Now, interesting thing. Horten is on the way up to Oslo. Horten is nowhere near Bergen. Nowhere near, realistically, the operational area. These are boats which were probably trying to run from Germany, had made it out from Germany in the previous couple of days, and had got there. That's it. Norway continues after the Shameless Book Plug. They're not. That's the little bet from Chandlord. Ooh. Hello, fast forward. Chief of ship, Thankful, when so good doctors Canadian driving the airport in Toronto obviously traumatized them. Look, Hamilton was lovely. Halifax was wonderful. But in my defense of my colleagues, Toronto Pearson traumatized them. Everything else after that just made it worse. But Toronto Pearson was the true trauma. It was the true trauma. It really was. Now, the thing is, I will say, some boats do end up in Canada. There are a couple of boats which make it as far as Canada. But, yeah, where the boats end up in Norway is almost as interesting as where they don't end up. Okay? The next list, we start going down, and this is the next set of also ones which end up in Norway. Start going through them and think, well, where are these ending up? Kristiansund. Okay, they're all Type 23s, mainly. Okay, and then we start going... Stavanger. Again, there's a whole feature of Type 23s, but Trondheim, Narvik, they're Type 7s. So what you start to get is a picture here. The boats which are coming in from operations, or which could have been operational anyways, are mostly the Type 7s, which are coming in from the North Atlantic, and are coming into Norway, are coming home. Most of the ones which you're seeing in the other ports, whether that's in Stralsund, in Horten, etc., they're the boats which are escaping from Germany. They are the boats which are escaping from Germany. Even the ones in Stavanger, let's be honest, that is well before Bergen. They've gone a little bit further out into the North Sea, but they haven't got that far. I wonder how much of Norway is as far away from the Soviets is a factor. I think it's more that that Norway was still firmly under German control. If you surrendered there, if you made it there, you were surrendering into a large German organization. There were going to be a lot of senior officers. You weren't going straight into basically the hands of the enemy. I do find it interesting, though, what comes with the other some of the other things when we get into the next stuff. But first, shameless book plug. And also, I need to talk to you. Tell something, a few things. A few of you on Twitch might be interested to know that myself and Gareth the Brit have put forward ourselves for going to TwitchCon as a panel on history, education, computer games, and Twitch, basically. How you can do the whole education streaming on Twitch and how it would work. And so far, all we've had so far back is positive. We know we've been taken in for consideration. We think we've got a fairly good thing going in, and we have been told not to expect to hear anything until I think it is. Let me just check the email to make sure I get this right. Between February 7th and March the 16th, so not for at least another 5 days. So we're still very much hoping that we will hear, but of course next week I'm not doing a Twitch live on the Thursday. I won't be doing that because I'll be away. I'll be staying in a travel lodge in London and doing A-level and GCSE, basically tuition. I'm running a centre for an organisation called Justin Craig. So I won't be here next Thursday. There will be a premiere on YouTube, but there'll be nothing on Twitch. I do apologise for that. I really should be doing more on Twitch, considering I've put myself forward for this competition, but this has come up. So yeah, hopefully it'll be good. And please note, whilst we're talking about this, I'd like suggestions for Well, if I go to TwitchCon, our panel will probably only be one day. But we'll probably try and do both days at TwitchCon so we can see this all stuff there. Is there anything you think I should go see while I'm there? Anything I should wander around and see? You know, any suggestions are really, really cool with me, because I'd like to wander around to see quite a bit. I've never been to anything like TwitchCon. It was kind of fun having a conversation with Gareth the Brit about this, going, have you been to Comic-Con? Nope. Have you been to anything like this before? Well, I've been to arms trade fairs and quite a few of those things. No, it's nothing like those at all. Okay. Those are my only point of reference. So, yes, it's held in Rotterdam. Yes, it's going to be the last weekend in May. Hopefully we can do it. Now, other than that, you're also going to hear another advertisement this week. There's going to be a conference advertised this week. I'm not going to give out details yet online, but it's coming up for the first weekend in June, which is going to be in the UK, and it's going to be a very cool conference. And there's going to be quite a few people there giving talks who like me there. It's going to be fun. But yes, TwitchCon Rotterdam. So the European TwitchCon, not the... look, in a nice way, I would love to believe I was good enough and big enough to get a panel at TwitchCon in America, but I doubt it. I sincerely, if I'm being honest, I doubt I do make that grade. So I've applied for the European one because I think I am good enough and could give them a good panel and good discussion, because I think education on Twitch is something which is not talked about enough, and there are some very good ideas for how to get things like history and like these things into the just chatting section, into these things to talk with people. And I think it's fun. And yes, if people bring books, I'll sign them. It'd be very rude of me not to if you bring a book there. So yeah, I'd be there, I'd sign them. And you know, it'll be quite fun if it is able to be done. It's going to be something which, frankly, I think all of us will enjoy and also will have fun with. I am slightly worried that Gareth the Brit is promising an entirely different way to get me there. He has an idea about something, and it is slightly worrying me that he has an idea. I'm quietly worried what that idea might be. And I don't mean that in a rude way, I mean that in a Gareth the Brit was giggling when he told me this kind of way. And that worries me when he's giggling. Ferry from Harwich. I'm hoping it's the ferry from Harwich. That'll be fine. I'm just not sure what he's going. But anyway, quickly go through some of the questions. Let's hear him. With Operation Deadlight, when did the planning begin? I've already sort of answered that. I think it's probably about the British are planning it. Probably from about April. But Regman is definitely about April as well. Does Rune need to be sent to the host? No. Not yet. Listen, how long does it take to scuttle a U-boat? Well, you have to remember, U-boats are designed to sink, but getting them to sink in a way in which they are not recoverable is slightly more difficult. But that's the point. They're trying to destroy the capability of them as well. So basically, you open the hatches, you open the cocks to let in the water into the water tanks, and basically nature takes its course quite quickly. And water, as we know, likes to destroy things very, very quickly. Salt water especially. This is something I have to keep explaining to people when it comes to warship maintenance. They keep going, well, you know, these things have months of operations according to their industry standards. And you sit there and go, yeah, there's a slight difference though if you're a warship. You don't do the constant cruising as much. You're more likely to do speed changes and rapid speed changes than you are a merchant ship, which usually just gets to speed and keeps to it. which is going to have its wear and tear. Salt water has wear and tear, and there's also the fact that if you're a warship, you don't maintain stuff when you need to, as in a thing of, I'm going to leave this and only make this. This has 12 months operation between maintenance schedules, so I don't have to do it. The maintenance only every 12 months. The problem is what happens if you end up going into combat at 11 months? Are you going to be comfortable with that system? No. So you tend to maintain it every 4 months. You over-maintain in many ways. And that's to make sure your 12 months is always as far away as it can be to give you plenty of time for operations in a war without being worried about things. Did any of the U-boats resist scuttling? Mostly they resisted by going away elsewhere and trying to get away. No, I wish they were AG Bell. They'd be a fun one. But no, my doctor was very nice. Carry 151. Do we know if the home boat count included any of the failed superbuilt? Yes, I've answered that. Yes. Ian and Clarke. What makes a good location for a sub-base versus a surface fleet base? Or do they both need the same requirements? Actually, that's an interesting thing. Surface fleets usually need a larger port, but they can deal with a shallower draft. If you want your submarines to be... the question becomes, do you want a sub-base where your subs can dip underwater during the day if they need to, for the protection against air attack? Do you want a space where they can do their underwater testing? Pier side, which is something you probably do want them to be able to do. You want them to be able to sink pier side, and so if anything goes wrong, they can literally send up a beep, and you've got a crane dockside that can come along, pick them up and get them out and go. Yeah, so what went wrong? We couldn't come back and go up again. Okay, well, it's a good job we had the crane here. We lifted you out very quickly. Let's take this boat and have a look at it. So there are some differences in how you deploy facilities, and usually you try to keep them separate because U-boats or submarines will try and enter and get as close to shore as possible underwater for their operational security, and go out as soon as they can underwater for their operational security. That means they could end up bashing into things if people aren't looking in confined waters. If you've got surface ships and submarines wandering around in the same waters at similar times, accidents are more likely to happen than if you make sure they don't meet till they are further out to sea where the water is deeper and there's more likely to be clearance. It's all fun. Dave Harrison, the June conference, can you give us a hint as to the location? Because it'll be my birthday weekend and I need to know if I can make excuses to run away from the family. Let me just check. Well, it's in the north of England and roughly in the centre. And I will tell you this. If I'm not mistaken, the... Ooh... Well, I don't think the M1 goes too far away from it, from memory. The A1 certainly doesn't. So it's able to be got to quite easily. It's quite well serviced by trains and various other things. It's a fun one to get to. And realistically, it should be enjoyable. But it will all be advertised this week. All the details will go out this week, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff put out this week. It's going to be a very cool conference. Thank you, Leslie. M1 does go there. Yes, M1 goes sort of close to it. It goes there. Yeah, it's able to be got to quite easily. I think... I seem to remember the A64 for some reason, but I don't know why when it comes to that place. Not Darlington. But I'm not giving any more details on that, and as I said, it all comes out this week. There will be lots of information coming out this week. That's good. Right on. Yeah, Leslie, don't give away too much information. And I have been slightly naughty in that I was asked to give it to people who are, any. I was given a limited number of people I'm allowed to sort of to say, these are my friends. They're going to message you. And I basically went to put it in the Masters Arms chat and said if any of you are interested, because I looked at my friend list and went, ones who are able to come who do not have small children, very limited. Very limited. Ones who are able and interested to come who do not have small children, even more limited. Seneca. It's going to be open up. It's all going to be organised through Britain at War magazine. So if you message them, they're going to be dealing with tickets. And yes, everyone's allowed to come who buys a ticket. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be a really lot of fun. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, the more people the better, it's going to be good. I'm going to try and arrange it so I'm going to be there for a couple of nights. So I can see if people do come along and want to see us, we can meet up and say hi. And there's, I do know party arrangements with the place are we are going to be given full access to the place and able to wander around. I know, Seneca, you're really bad at reading Discord. Shall I see if you can come with me? Shall I ask them if you can come? Would you like to? I'll see if the poodle can come. I will see. He may be able to, he may not be. He may have pressing demands here. You haven't noticed he's been for a haircut today. That's why he looks extra dashing, he feels. Don't you? Look extra dashing. And yes, it's a very, very cool place. Can the Corgi come? The Corgi's more difficult. The poodle likes travelling on trains, and I will probably go by train. Simply put, because it's just easier than taking a car, parking it, and then having to driving all the way back and all the other things. It's just easier because the train, there's a nice train which goes pretty much directly from where I am to almost there. So it's a very easy scenario for me. Whereas cars would be more fun. But the poodle likes travelling on trains. We actually have there's actually a good deal in the UK. If you are travelling on a train, if you do want to take a dog, and you can arrange it, it's usually certain trains, and you book for my advice is always to book first class, and try and book a couple of seats, and then you've got space for you and the dog, and no one complains. And first class really isn't that expensive in the UK, because first class basically means you've got a slightly comfier chair and a sandwich. So, with that being said, the next one is, we've got America. And this really does give this. America, Canada, Gibraltar, France, Argentina, Denmark. All these give you a nice list of who's out doing what. The ones in Denmark, 9C, 9C, 7, Type 7C, Type 9C. Again, basic operations. But what about the ones near America? Well, 9C, 9C, a 9D2, a 9C, and a 10B. U234. Just going to check that because yeah, it's rare that they get out that they were that far. But yeah. That's an interesting service record, that particular vessel. Commissioned March 1944. Surrendered to USS Sutton in May 1945. One of the vessels sunk by Greenfish. But she isn't sunk, and the American counterpart to Operation Deadlight until November 1947. She sunk by Greenfish in November 1947. She was built as the Type 10s were sort of mine-laying submarines. She was used as a cargo submarine. That's what she was turned into, and she was actually supposed to be delivering uranium oxide and other systems to Japan. But she went and surrendered to the USA. Not many Type 10s. What do you complain about? I know, it's amazingly, it's 9:05 and you start complaining it's bedtime. Everyone, please take note, it's 9:05. We know it is. Raleigh's complaining it's bedtime. I know. You have the Ralsonian calendar. But most of these boats, as you can see, are the ones which are out operational. Again, it tells you what is operational in terms of the German fleet. Really does. It's kind of it's an interesting point. We're talking at the end of World War II, when they have apparently are trying to push forward all these advanced Wunderwaffen which are going to enter the war, and what's actually operational, what's actually visible. And then we get to the ones which end up in the UK. And that's just a whole list of, oh my lord. Type 7s, Type 9s. There's a Type 23, which is captured on the 14th of May 1945 in Dundee. Type 23 ends up in Dundee. I'm not sure if that was a disappointment for Dundee or a disappointment for the Type 23. But either way, they end up in Dundee. Look, Erebol, the vast majority, let's be honest, are ending up in the north of the UK. Let's be honest, they're ending up in the north of Scotland. If we're being very tight in. Dundee is quite far south compared to the ones which all end up in Erebol. Portland and Weymouth, they are a long way south. And again, this gives you an idea of what is their operational routing. These boats were probably aiming for Norway and then went, there's no point. We'll go into the UK. And when they surface, and they get accosted by a British patrol ship, which they normally surface nearby and go, "We surrender," the ship would take them terrible. But with that all being said, and all these boats being taken in, and the vast majority are Type 7s, Type 7Cs all the way. I know every time we talk about German submarines, people want to talk about the Type 21s, the Type 23s. The war effort is realistically the Type 7C, okay? If you want to know which boat you're most likely to be fighting in the North Atlantic, it is the Type 7C. The amount of times I'll listen to people's stories and go, "We think we were engaged by a Type 9. We think we were engaged by this and that." And they're always going for the esoteric vessels, the larger vessels, the more prestigious boats. No, odds are it was a Type 7C. Maybe a /41, maybe not. Depends on your luck, which period of war, which one it's more likely. But odds are it's a Type 7C. Cars only runs on the Central European time, even though they never left the UK. I have no idea, that dog. Raleigh just does it. Raleigh has the Ralsonian calendar, and it will be stuck to. The interesting thing to me, again, is where some of the other boats end up. Because if you consider what makes it to Argentina, it's a Type 9C and a Type 7C. What makes it to Portugal, as I was already talking about, with two Type 7s. The ones that make it to Argentina don't make it until the 10th of July and the 17th of August. They officially surrender in July and August 1945. Now that's technically because of the rules of internship and various things and when things can be taken in, etc. does add time onto that. It does. But again, they were wandering for a long time. It took them a long time to get where they were going. It cannot have been a fun trip. It really can't have been a fun trip. They made it. But not a fun trip. And there is actually a photo coming up, I think, of the type photo. I think it's not come up yet, but it's Type 530. The boats which were surrendered to the Argentinians were sunk by the Americans mostly in 1947, I think. I know U-530 was. I'm just checking for U-977. Yeah, that was actually sunk in 1946. The Americans mostly used their German U-boats for testing out their own submarines in terms of their ability to sink submarines. The British are slightly different with Operation Deadlight. There are a lot of interesting methodologies used. That being said, now you got the boat surrendered. Now you have the boat surrendered, you now have to work out what to do with them. And that's a problem. That is a problem. You see, realistically, there is already worries about the Soviet Union. And remember about the whole problem with the German fleet post-World War I? Where realistically, the British were kind of happy. It was kind of helpful for the British that they scuttled themselves because it kind of dealt with a problem before it became a problem. Hello. It kind of dealt with an issue before it became an issue. That was a good thing, vis-a-vis the... Oh. Ghost bits have feeling. They have nerve endings. Ow. Okay. You're eager to be in the front. And one of the interesting things that happens, for the British at least with this, is they're able to offset the destruction of a lot of these boats against what they need to get diplomatically. For both Britain and America, they want them destroyed. Interestingly enough, the Soviet Union, which they were feared would want them a lot, was actually concede to them quite quickly. The thing is, they didn't really want them either. As said, the vast majority of boats we're talking about, that they have got hold of, that they have captured, are Type 7s. There are very few of the interesting Type 21s. No one really wants a Type 7. Why? Because the honest opinion of most nations is that they have equivalents or if not better than Type 7s in service. I am very glad he's not an 80-kilogram Great Dane. He's merely a 30-kilogram poodle. A 36-ish kilogram poodle. KVG, do not even put that out there. Don't even put that out there. The fact that you're demanding biscuits after what you just did is disturbing. I've got to start wearing a cricket box for these lives. So, you know, the negotiations go forward. And one of the interesting things for the negotiations is that for the Allies to be happy, and here's a fun thing to come through. For the Allies to be happy, they insist that a lot of these boats, the Polish should also be involved in their destruction. Yes, the Poles were picked as the independent guarantor. There is all sorts of diplomatic language around it, and I've even seen some authors write as, oh, they were available because they didn't go to the Far East and this, that, and the other. No. The Poles are quite good ASW specialists. And the Brits are happy for them to act as guarantors involved in this. The Americans don't really care because they're fairly sure the Brits are going to destroy these boats. And the Soviets are certain that the Poles will want to destroy anything German. So their entire cunning plan is, let the Poles get into this. Let the Poles do it. And it'll be done. And well, the Poles do get involved in it. We have RP Clarke here. It's a Hunt class escort destroyer. And it was, as you can see, it's here. It's towing a Type 23 U-2337 out for scuttling. 28th November 1945. You see, some of the boats were just scuttled. Officially. There is a really interesting bit of discussion going on in that some boats are scuttled, some boats are just listed as being destroyed on a certain date. No one's quite sure why. And some boats are listed as not listed. We know they're attacked with a weapon system. They don't omit what weapon system was used. Which is fun. So you start to realise very quickly the British were using a lot of weapon systems to test them. Again, what's interesting about these again is that whilst the fleet air arm get involved in some destructions, the submarines are used for some destruction, the vast majority are surface vessels. None of the boats are refloated to be used after they've been scuttled. Some are refloated to examine the damage and then are sunk again. But none are refloated to be used. None of the ones sunk in this. You have to remember again, 150 boats are surrendered to the Allies. 116 are scuttled in this operation. So that's the point. There are a few more which are scuttled and a few more which were used as testing. But we're talking about 116 are scuttled in Deadlight out of 150. Again, not all are scuttled in Deadlight. As said, some of them are sunk by one weapon, then they are resurfaced, and they're sunk again. And again, that is kind of rare, as far as we understand it. Because some of them have an interesting, we're not quite sure operation what happens to them. I'd also point out there's been quite a few surveys done on them in recent years, because some nations have sometimes considered, we're going to lift one up and put it on a museum. We're going to lift it up from the seabed and bring a museum, and we know where these are. They've realised, A, how expensive they are, and B, they've been reminded that these vessels technically belong diplomatically to Russia, the UK, and America. Because technically, they were spread responsibility. So if you want to refloat one, to put it in, let's say, your museum of the Battle Atlantic or something like that, you have to get diplomatic permission from all those three nations. And one of the reasons why they were the Allies were very keen on sinking a lot of the German stuff was they were very keen on avoiding it becoming a shrine for Nazism. That was their big fear. Creating a shrine for the Nazis. They were obsessed with that as a risk. Potentially a little bit too much for a session, but they were obsessed with that as a risk. Now, the plan, though, for all this destruction, have been quite simple. Get the boats as far away from Germany as possible. Test the methods of sinking as best as possible. But get it all done as quickly as possible so that effort, forces, and lessons can be focused on the ongoing war, burgeoning potentiality of conflict with the communist powers. There are issues. Now, when we start going through and... this is where I have fun, because this is where I turn to my Excel spreadsheets. And, yeah, I know. There are people who worry about the fact that I have Excel spreadsheets for everything, but I would say it's part of my dyslexia. It's the way I remember things, to make sure I remember the facts, is I have Excel spreadsheets for all sorts of information. Most of these vessels are sunk at roughly 56 degrees north, 10 degrees west, or in that area they're in. Some are 55 degrees north, 55 degrees north, 9.5 degrees west, etc. There are variations, but they are roughly within a sort of very limited area. The vast majority have their method of destruction listed as naval gunfire. That's basically, you take the boat out, and you leave all its hatches open, and then you make sure it starts to sink by shooting everything you can at it. And I mean everything you can at it. There are descriptions of 4-inch shells being aimed so precisely that the one shot takes out the entire conning tower. There have been other descriptions of them trying to use, and successfully using, pom-poms on them. What I will say is that sometimes these things get a little bit more interesting because, for example, with the first vessel which was sunk on the 14th of May 1945, well, not first vessel, but the first vessel which was sunk by a solo asset, it was sunk by R.P. Pirun. Yes, Pirun, the Polish vessel. The tow parted, and so they were forced to sink it with every single gun they had. It's amazing how many of the other vessels do not last that long into November 1945. That was a Type 7C, which is the first one sunk. But what I will point out is the Royal Navy manages to sink on the 27th of November 1945 5 Type 23s in a single day. One, no admitted method of destruction. One is declared as being scuttled. 3 are said to be destroyed by gunfire by HMS Onslaught and ORP Blazankia. Now, the one which is not listed as a method of destruction was technically said to have foundered under tow, getting to Loch Ryan, where they were being sunk from. You know, they're going from Loch Ryan to go be sunk, and it's learned to leave there. Sorry, I misspoke that one. They're leaving from Loch Ryan, and just as it's leaving from Loch Ryan, it founders under tow. And there's a discussion as to whether it gets shot or not, or whether it sinks for that reason. But they leave Loch Ryan, and they go from there to where they're being sunk. Loch Ryan was where they're being stored. And it carries on. Also, I will say this, the 27th of November is a particularly active day. It really is. It's 5 Type 23s in a day. On the 28th of November, the Royal Navy also, and the Polish Navy, really do keep going, because Onslow and Pirwin carry on. And it is interesting that it's 2 destroyers. It's HMS Onslow and it's HMS Pirwin, and they are really going for it. There are also naval gunfire. And on the 28th of November, they go through another 6 Type 23s. I'm not saying that the Royal Navy has something... Actually, maybe... No, 7 Type 23s, sorry. I'm not saying the Royal Navy has something in for the Type 23s here. But the fact is, 14 Type 23s are got rid of in the first 13 Type 23s in the first 2 days of the sinking. They get rid of these Type 23s. I'd like to point out again that maybe, just maybe, the Type 21 is not the boat you need to be worried about. Maybe the Royal Navy felt the boat you need to be worried about was the Type 23. Because by golly do they sink those quickly. Did the battleships get in on the actions to do? No. None of the battleships... No. The destroyers aren't letting the battleships close enough. This is HMS Onslow and ORP Pirwin. It's an O-class destroyer and Pirwin. An N-class. They're not letting anyone nearby. And, yeah, it carries on like this. And it gets slightly more interesting as time goes on. I just got up my notes about mangrove U-boats, and there are lots of rumours on them. I don't think anyone's actually found it, judging by my list. But I could be out of date. There could have been ones popped up and skimmed me by. So if you have a link to it, send it to me. I'll investigate it tonight while we're live. I'll look it up as part of the questions. But I ain't got anything showing up. Basically, the Type 23 is the boat which is designed for coastal waters. If you want to make the coastal convoys, and if you really wanted to stop the ability of the Allies to get supplies across the channel, the Type 23 is the boat to do it. If you wanted to stop D-Day, the Type 23 is the boat that'll do it. Not Type 21. Type 23 is the boat that'll do it. It's designed for coastal operations. And yeah, that's the scary asset. That's the asset which would cause the Allies more trouble. Also, as a rule, the 23s actually had better build quality than Type 21s. That's not saying much, okay? That's not a very high bar to cross. Or, challenge. But they were better. I know, your brother's outside, patrolling. And you're inside, snoozing. Lions, pretty much, yes. The Type 23s are the U-class equivalents. That's another reason why the Royal Navy sort of is slightly worried about them. They know how good their U and V boats are, so they look at the Type 23s and go, excuse me. We know how good our equivalents are. Now, then there's a fair number of ones which are sunk with no notes, nothing at all. They're all Type 7s. It's amazing how many Type 7Cs get sunk with no notes. We don't know whether they are sunk by naval gunfire. We don't know if they were sunk by torpedoes. Nothing. Now, the thing is, there are some weapons being tested. And as a rule, the British do one of two things. They either use a euphemism, or they just don't put any records down. And when the British approach record keeping. So when the British are wanting to keep something secret, they either use the euphemism, the 13.5-inch special, etc. for the 15-inch gun, etc. all these things. The 15-inch B for the 16.5-inch gun. The 15-inch special for the 18-inch. Seems to be that in certain name of those programs, etc. in World War I. That's a sort of traditional British. Or you just don't have anything. You have nothing written down at all. And yeah. That's the scenario. The British are just not writing anything down. Now, so the reason why you're not getting all three allies sending a destroyer to have a fight and see who could do to sink the most boats is quite simply because they want to they're prioritizing Japan. As I put up here, you've got an ongoing conflict in Japan, you've got an ongoing war effort which is requiring naval resources. They're using limited resources for also dealing with Germany's surrender and policing the demarcation line between them and the Soviets and making sure the Baltic and various things are organized. There's also a lot of worry about how the Soviets are maneuvering their forces. So there's a lot of what I would call conflict management going on. It's one of those things that's really hard to explain. For armies, when it's peacetime, it gets easier. For navies, when it's peacetime, it gets harder. In wartime, it's simple for navies because they see an opponent, they shoot it. It's dealt with. For armies, in peacetime, they withdraw to their own training areas, they withdraw to their own borders. It's far more easy to manage. Navies, the moment it's peacetime, it's all international commons, everyone can go where they like, and suddenly you're not allowed to shoot at people who are not your friends. You have to manage their presence. You have to deter their presence. You have to... Basically, they turn up with a cruiser. You have to have a cruiser there to go, yes, we know you're big and powerful, but we're just the same as you. Now, please, let's stop playing this game of who's got the bigger one, and let's just go and have a drink. And usually the sailors are going, that's what the governments are playing as a game. Yes, they are. Want a drink? Yes. Do you know where the good pubs are? Huh. Do we know where the good pubs are? You think you can drink beer? Da! We can drink vodka. We are gonna beat you. No! We are going to smash you. And then you find out a load of people who've grown up drinking vodka really aren't that good at handling their beer. A load of people who've grown up drinking beer are not always that great at handling their vodka. Because, if you get used to beers versus spirits, you develop a tolerance on one type of alcohol. But if you suddenly have spirits, and I say this as a non-drinker, but yeah, it's fun. The German boats were not that impressive at all. No. They were impressive in the aggregate. They are impressive in the effort they put in to get them, and there are points at which it is a technological race, but usually it's things like okay, the example I tend to give is the Germans at the beginning of the war work out they go inside a convoy, the escorts are on the outside. Takes more the time for the British to figure out than I'm comfortable admitting, realistically, that one, but they do. They eventually figure it out. It's mainly figured out by Führers going, this is the only way that those kill swallows make sense. They're inside the convoy, not outside the convoy. But the British were confident, well, if they're inside the convoy, they're going to get sunk by someone, so why would they be inside the convoy? It's the most dangerous place to be. But of course, the German U-boats thought, well, if we're inside the convoy, it's harder to find us. Unfortunately, they then took them a long time to figure out the British had figured this out, and were leaving an escort intentionally in the middle of the convoy. And so, for the rest of the war, then you get merchant sailors complaining that there's always this work-shy escort which hangs around in the middle of the convoy. Don't know what they're there for. They're just hiding the whole time. You actually get complaints written by some of the merchant commanders complaining about one of the escorts being a coward and hiding in the middle of the convoy. Of course, it's not hiding in the middle of the convoy. It's because for the rest of the war, the Germans are still trying to get into the middle of the convoy to attack from the middle of the convoy, and so the British keep an escort in the middle of the convoy, so if a German U-boat pops up, they can go, oh, there you are, Pratt, bang, and take it out. Because it had turned into an excellent killing position. Because the German U-boats, for some reason, never expected it and couldn't really hear as well against all the merchant ships. There was an escort in the middle of the convoy. It was because of the course, though, that they couldn't hear them, that they're hiding that position to be a good position for the U-boats, because it meant that the escorts couldn't hear them from inside either as well. It's a classic catch-22 for both sides. But yeah, that's some of the stuff you have during the U-boat war. Now, here's some of the fun things, though. Because, for example, the last U-boat sunk, the last one sunk, is a Type 21. And she sunk on 12 February 1946, as mentioned, U-3514. And she sunk by squid, depth charges, and naval gunfire. They use squid, the mortar thrower, squid, the thing that chucks actual proper depth charges. Not like hedgehogs. A squid actually chucks a lot of actual, a significant amount of explosive your way. And that's something else. If you start to look through the list, some of the boats are sunk by torpedoes, as said. Some are sunk by naval gunfire, depth charges, and bombs from aircraft, rockets from aircraft. There is a lot of information gathered, but there's also a lot of unknowns listed. And one of the things you have to remember about all this information coming in is that it's the first time the British are realistically able to test what damage their weapons do. They're able to absolutely test what damage their weapons do, and look at the boats and go, yeah. Didn't Western Approaches diagram U-boat tactics and training submarine? Yeah, there's a whole RENS unit which is involved in it, which I have a book about somewhere, and I've done a video on. They are a very cool unit. They do a lot of the work in a lot of the critical work in that period, and they're useful. They really are. But yes, there is some interesting fun in World War II. But some of them, we don't even know how they sink the boats. Yeah, there is an iron brew stack in the corner. You see, normally I'm limited. I limit myself to a maximum of three. Usually, most days it's 2 cans, but days like Thursdays and Sundays when I have lives, it's four cans a day of iron brew on those days. So it's mostly sort of I limit my. That's how I limit my drinking of iron brew. I have cans. Because if you open a bottle, it's very easy to keep filling up a glass. Whereas if you open a can, it's 1 can, lid put on the side, got an empty can there till the end of the day when you put it in the bin, and you sort of go, do I open another one? So it's a good way of keeping yourself in check and making sure you don't do stuff to excess, I find, is keeping cans. But it does mean if you have a month's supply sitting behind you, you have a lot of cans. Long term, there's going to be a fridge for it. And yes... Well, now my dog's ordered me to drink it, I had to, of course, open a bottle. I like the glass bottles. I'm going to make a display of those, but I like the cans are better for personal consumption, for limiting personal consumption. Iron Bradford, I'll be answering questions at the end. I'll be doing a proper... The bot is working to take in questions, so... If I do this... That should give you all the systems of how to put in a... Yeah, there you go. If you want to put in a question, there you go. What Dan isn't the doctor I'm referring to. It was my GP I went to who told me I had to drink iron brew. Very helpful them. Very, very helpful them. It always takes longer to show up in YouTube than it does in Twitch, but it should be there shortly. The Powder Monkey note. But, as said, and as I want to keep saying, we don't know what sinks some of them. We don't know. We know they get sunk. We know some of them found under tow. And that's, again, an interesting point, is with the notes, okay? And this is why you start to get suspicious about some of the vessels. Because they're prepared to tell you found in tow for many of the vessels which they don't tell you how they get sunk. Some, they tell you they found in tow and then they sink them with gunfire. So I know one interesting thing is when they want to tell you what's happened, when they are telling you what's happened, when they don't care about it, they give you a surfeit of information. Then sometimes they just give you no information. None at all. And that gets interesting. That is where it gets interesting. Now, one of the boats, which is sunk under this program, is of course U-760, the Type 7C, which had been interned in Spain. And it is sunk on the 30th of December 1945. And it is literally, officially, towed from Ferrol to 55.5 degrees north, 10 degrees west to sink it. Well, that's the thing, Foxen. There's a lot of weapon systems in development at the time to test. There are a lot of them. My running theory is the ones they don't want to talk about are the ones they tested new weapon systems on. And I was potentially thinking, oh, it's going to be Squid. But then, and then I sort of read the detailed reports that come out from them and when they admit to using Squid, and I'm going, well, if you're prepared in 12th February 1946 and 10th of February 1946 to write about using Squid, and it's Loch Ackling which does it, then, literally it's this vessel. It's a Loch-class frigate, HMS Loch Ackling, which sinks a Type 21 and a Type 7C. She does the last two boats to be sunk. The 10th of February 1946 and 12th of February 1946. Pirwin's last sinking is the 2nd of February 1946, and that's with gunfire, and that is a Type 7C. HMS Solbay gets to sink a Type 21, U-2511, on the 7th of January 1946. But, yeah, you go through them all and you start looking at going, okay, realistically, the gaps are quite rare, but when they do turn up, they're usually Type 7s. There's a couple of Type 9s. They are mostly boats which people aren't going to ask too many questions about. How did they get sunk? And that's interesting to me. If it's the boats which are mostly not going to get questioned, are going to be the ones which are mostly the ones which are going to get lost in the mass. There's also quite a few which, you know, are getting taken out, have been parked in Ireland and other places which have been taken off for us. Where they're being sunk, it's quite deep. It is quite deep, Thomas. It's... And I don't want to keep labouring this point, but I want to discuss it. It's an opportunity which we haven't had much of in recent times. If you think about it from a data gathering perspective, it was the last great opportunity to do a lot of sympathetic and scientific grade testing where you can test the boat to see, you can test different methodologies on similar enough boats to be able to be able to put together the data as a workable analysis of this is the most effective weapon of hitting here will cause this damage, hitting here will cause this damage. And if you think about the data which is used in the Cold War to develop a lot of the torpedo tactics and a lot of the killing tactics for aiming at submarines in the Cold War, that data had to come from somewhere. And that's the point, I think, that really shows what they're using this scenario for. And I think a lot of the data is shared. I think the Soviets thought they'd get the data back from the Polish crews. But you have to remember, a lot of the Polish Navy refused to return home. A lot of the Polish Navy refused to return home to a Poland occupied, as they saw it, by the Soviet Union. So they didn't get that data. They didn't get the people who had the data. They thought that would be there. I think there was a bit of a gamble on the Soviet part that the Allies weren't going to hand them over these boats. That wasn't going to happen. So they thought they'd be clever, get the Poles involved in it, and the Poles will come back to Poland, and then they'll get the information from them. I think, to my mind, that's what makes sense on it. With that being said, time for questions time again. So let's see what questions are coming. Let's move that up to a small site. Why is it tonight it decides to play games? Oh, no, I don't want to. I want you to shrink. I'm literally over the square. Shrink. Ay, caramba. Sometimes these things are so fun. Okay. Karen 15, which is the one in the South American mangrove that you can see the wreck of? As said, I don't have data about that. I haven't ever heard of one actually being in a mangrove anywhere in South America. Most of the I think the South American mangroves, the ones we're talking about mostly go along the Brazilian coast, I think. I'm not sure how many end up down as far as Argentina, but some possibly do. But the thing is, it mostly goes from Brazil to Colombia, and Colombia to Peru on the Pacific side. And I haven't got. I've looked it up, and I'm not getting any results from my files. Means I could have missed it. So there could be one out there that made it into mangroves, but I ain't got details. So if you send me a link to it, I'll go hunting it down, and I'll try and hunt down information about it, but I can't find anything at the moment. Paul Amos 970. Did the Royal Navy want to look into the later versions of... Ooh, let's go to... Did the Royal Navy not want to look into later versions of U-boats Type 21-23 for testing it? They did muck around a bit. They did do a bit of testing, but also there was a bit in the Royal Navy of, we've got the V-class, we've got the U-class, we've got some pretty good boats of our own which are going on similar lines. One interesting thing you have to remember is that the Royal Navy has their own work going on quite heavily in submarine development. A, for ASW operations, but also B, for their own submarine developments. The U-class are probably the first boats to enter service which have been extensively streamlined testing. That's a lot of the secret to their operation capabilities. The V's are improved on them. To be fair, the British do look at some of the German stuff. They do find it interesting. But I'd say they're drawing more from the lessons of themselves and the Americans in their boat operations. And one of the interesting things and remarks you get from the British about the German boats is some of the technologies. They look at them and go, it's less refined than the versions which are in the Dutch boats. Some of their analysis of looking at things like the Schnorkel, they think the Dutch had better options worked through. But also, one of the things that affects the British approach to the German boats is realistically the British spend a lot of time looking at build quality and being very unimpressed by it. And that makes them unimpressed by other things. The British almost get more from the German papers and design studies and their theoretical work than they do from the actual constructions, because I think to an extent the British look at the actual build quality and are deterred by that. How many of the scuttle wrecks have we found? We know where pretty much all of them are. We have fairly good testing. For quite a few years, it was used as ocean reconnaissance, was a good area to go test out the various oceanography boats, boats and ships to go and do their studies and survey that area, and that's what they were used for, because you knew you found something. So it was a case of go find it and let's see what you find. And there's been a few more surveys and a few dives even on them. Foxhound 21 out of 420 Was it a soft loss of Type 43? Do you think it was a missed but ugly opportunity in midship helipad? Not really. Because whilst it's theoretically a very good idea, it's one of those things of, it's theoretically a good idea until you realise the pilots are human beings. And then you realise that's why the end of ship hangar works quite so well. Because, how do I put this way? The helicopters come in and they can veer either way if they have a problem. When you're coming in from the side to land, if you make a mistake, you have superstructure all around you. Theoretically, it's the most stable place to part of the ship to land. In reality, no. Let's just go no. It makes so much sense from a theoretical perspective, I do realise. But once you start looking at it and going, hang on, humans going to be operating this, it doesn't make sense from an operational perspective. It makes sense from a engineeringly theoretical perspective when you look at all the engineering going, but that's the part of the hull which is going to go rise and fall the least. That's the part of the hull which is going to be the least active. That's the part of the hull which is going to be, you know, the widest already for them and make landing easy. And all sorts of good things. They can make good arguments. In reality, no. No. Loudwood, do you think the upcoming Dreadnought class is being reduced missile count? It's not going to reduce missile count. Okay, let's check. So, the Vanguard class, which are their predecessors, carried 16 ballistic missile tubes. And each of them could be armed with a trident with up to 12 MIRVs in them. Okay? So they could carry 16. And the Dreadnought class are... they're carrying 12. Each again with 12. Why they're not? I think... yeah, the reason they're using 12 is because they haven't been carrying a full 16 on the Tridents, on the Vanguards, isn't it? Because they've been reduced, they've been operating them at a reduced load, haven't they? Or have they been carrying a full 16? I'm trying to remember. This is where I have to start scanning through my head for things which I like to sometimes just file away in there. The UK maintained a stockpile of 120 warheads out of 215. Each of the Trident missiles, instead of carrying its full load of 12 warheads, usually carries just carries 3 to 4 warheads, and carries some jamming systems and basically some systems which are supposed to fake out and pretend they are different. So I think what they're planning on doing is taking 12 missiles. The warheads would be distributed around them instead. However, because you have to remember, each missile can take up to 12 MIRVs. So theoretically, if you've got currently carrying 16 each with 3 nuclear warheads and let's say 3 fakes, if you want to carry the same load on 12, you'd carry 4 and 4 and you'd still not be maxed out. I think the reality is that we have been running a very much reduced capability for a long time. And I think you can get a lot more. I think there are things you have to worry about first. This was the point I was actually thinking about, because they aren't reducing the warheads. They are reducing the missiles, but not reducing the warheads. So it's not a de facto reduction capability. The reality is we are running on less than maximum capability. I would also say that we are slightly behind, because as of the 2021 review, they increased the number of warheads to 260. It had been planned to drop from 215 to 180. It's now been raised up to 260. But they also said that they would no longer be providing information about the number of missiles and number of warheads deployed. Number of warheads deployed on missiles. So the thing is, if I've increased to 260, and historically I had 120 active out of 215, next generation of upgraded warheads are supposed to be slightly more operationally improved, as I understood it. But that, again, is based on old public data, because since 2021 they've been going on a deliberate ambiguity policy. Illegal beats. It's squeeze chair over, yeah. I have said this before many times, and someone's actually given a good idea. They suggested I put a little curtain around it to stop the dogs licking it. And I hadn't ever thought of that. I kept trying to put oils and various things on it which the dogs wouldn't like. But I just haven't got round to getting a curtain for it, or anything to protect it. So I will get on with this at some point, and then once I've got it protected and I've got a nice little curtain around it that hopefully the dogs won't stick their nose through and still lick it, I will then put some oil on it and it'll stop squeaking. But I haven't managed to get to that, so I haven't fixed that yet. But that was a very good idea. No, the Vanguards had 16. And the Dreadnoughts have 12. Larwood. And it's the warhead numbers. So the 260. So 120 out of 215 was about a 55% operational. If you're going up to 260, you're going up to roughly 140 warheads. So, by my count, roughly 140 warheads. If you times 48 by 3, and it's 3 boatloads which you tend to keep in stock and capable at any one point in time, that's 100. That each with 4 warheads, that's 144. So I reckon what they're probably planning on doing is, and this is me suppositioning based on the maths and the history. My reckoning is they're going to go up with, it's the word I've been searching for ages is decoy. Okay, about 4 warheads and at least 4 decoys on each missile. I wish that worked, Loudwood. I wish that worked, but no, they lick everything off and it squeaks. I've been trying to work it out for years, but also the fact is, this chair, I do love it, but it was given to me for my 13th birthday, which is nearly 26 years ago. Which is slightly scary to think about. And it is going to be replaced once I finished doing this house up, but the moment we've got so much building work going on, I've not even got my office to myself yet, so we'll see that. So yeah, it's... we'll see. Realistically, there's a whole tranche of things which need to be invested in, as much and as interesting a state as the number of nuclear weapons are for the UK. I would say on my order of priorities are, I would say at the top of the list are, and can be dealt with quickly, would be RFA pay increase for them. general service members' pay increase, and then start working through what we can fix quickly. We need to work on long-term projects as well, but we also need to fix the quick ones first as well. And the quick ones will be things like order Mark 41 VLS, order some more Tomahawks, there's a whole list of things. If I was doing what I would do to upgrade the Royal Navy and upgrade Britain, it would be fun. No, it's just you've got each missile. The D5, I think. I'm going to check out how many MRVs it can actually carry. So the British are developing the Astrea A21, which is replacing the Holbrook in the 2030s. That's the new one coming in. The American systems can carry up to 12, and seeing as the British and Americans use the same draw from the same stockpile, which they both own a certain number of, it's a fun system. It really is. It's one of those great ideas which someone has had a bright idea for. One of the problems with testing of the various Trident missiles is always that they do a lot of the tests on the missiles which are on the viable list using control systems so they don't make them go boom. Just to test them with computer systems, kind of like modern cars are hooked up to a computer and they spit out the error reports, and then the mechanic just goes and fixes that part, run in domestic. A lot of testing of the boats, they use the old missiles, which are basically one shot from going boom anyway. Which is why you get a whole load of, there's been another accident where the missile has blown up after leaving the boat. And you're going, well, that's fine, because really we were just using an old missile from the stockpile, which we either had to pay a lot of money to dispose of, or we could fire. And we were actually just testing the launch system on the boat. And the launch system worked fine, so we're happy with it. Frankly, we weren't cared. If the missile goes boom, we're not surprised. Frankly, that was one of the first generation of Tridents, and we're surprised it hadn't gone boom in the stockpile, honestly. It worked out this time. That's fine. You know, these things happen. I should stick this up. I read where Jess the Mist was a defense witness of the German submarine command. He offered to be. That's why they don't put the submariners on trial. It would have been embarrassing. It's one of the problems. Let's put it this way. When you're starting to... Also, the other problem was that very quickly at the end of World War II, the Allies found they had to rein in a lot of lawyers very quickly. Because the lawyers had ideas for prosecuting for all sorts of things, and the lawyers were informed, no, you can't prosecute for that, because we were doing that as well. That's part of warfare. But it's terrible! But it's warfare. Grow up. Stop this. There are things which are wrong, but war is terrible. War is not nice. But we can prosecute these people and make it never happen again. No, you can't. It ain't going to work like that. People are still going to do it. There is no point doing prosecutions for this because it is still going to happen. It is warfare. War is terrible. It's a good thing it's terrible. It makes us not want to do it that often. We don't want that to happen. Oh, don't get me started. Basically, There is a whole thing called lawfare, right? Where you how you use law as a method of waging war. And ultimately, I would argue, a lot of it seeks to try and turn war into a courtroom case. And that's nice in many ways. Law is a nicer thing to have an argument over. But doesn't tend to work. I know, but guess what? Everyone, just because you want to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night doesn't mean anyone else has to. We like to stay up. We like to party. I'll be nice. I won't make you stay up till 2 a.m. Although I won't be on Discord this evening, I do apologise. I hope there will still be a chat afterwards, but I won't be on Discord because I'm going to go and basically rest my voice after talking for quite a while anyway, because whilst I'm doing good and lubricating and being good, technically I'm not supposed to with the coughing. So that's why I'm also watching time. I probably will only go on to about 2.5 hours. So I'll probably only go on to about 20 to 11 this evening. I know it's 10:10, but no, he doesn't get to decide the bedtimes for the family. Cameron, fan article was conflating two supposed Argentinian wrecks. One confirmed, one not. Confirmed was off the coast. Ah, that makes more sense. Having been on a French frigate, IKEA could be a good place for them to get some things. Look, they can never have enough wine cabinets, they can never have enough wine glasses, and they can certainly not have enough racking for their wine aboard a French frigate. And IKEA does good ones of those, but also they do quite comfy beds. Loudwood, were the British ever interested in testing ARP engines tested furious by German? They did a bit of testing on it, but they also were testing their own ideas as well. The British did a lot of interesting testing. If you look at one of the biggest line items of defence spending in 1950s, late 1940s and early 1950s, is Britain testing various submarine propulsions. They look at all sorts of fun things, including liquefied natural gas propulsion and for submarines and all sorts of fun things. Jonathan, yes, they have wine on tap, but there is some bottles of wine you do not put on tap. I'm also not sure if they still have it on tap these days. I think they still do. Let's put it this way, okay? For alcohol, probably the French and the British ships are usually the best, but for food, I will never forget the American Vespucci. Oh, the Italian mistress of good food. I would sacrifice the entire American carrier fleet to protect that sailing ship and its food. I really would. You could tell me an operation to protect that ship would cost me 2 American carrier battle groups, and a British carrier battle group and a French carrier battle group, and I would still consider it a good return on investment as long as that vessel survived. That's good food. I'm joking, of course, but it is really good food. If the Amerigo Vespucci is ever coming anywhere near you, and you get the possibility of an invite to go eat aboard it, go. You will not be disappointed. The food is exquisite. How good were the Akazuki class destroyers compared to the Fletcher class? Well, the Akazukis were about 700 tons heavier in standard. They were theoretically better, but the reality is there are 175 of the Fletchers built. In terms of the Akazukis, I think in terms of making it into service, 12. They planned roughly 32, 12 made it into service. Of those, 6 were lost. Individually, they are potentially better vessels. One-on-one. Potentially. In reality, it's not good. It's not good at all. And if you consider the Suzuki by April 1945 is carrying its 4 twin dual-purpose 100mm dual-purpose guns. It is carrying some region of 47 25mm guns in 26 single and 7 triple mounts. 3 30mm AA guns in single mounts, 56 depth charges, and a quadruple 24-inch, that's a 610mm torpedo tubes. I'd say they need a lot more firepower. I think the last one completed is Hanazuki. And yeah, I'm not even sure if that's really completed to standard. Because, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it gets its torpedo reloaders, it gets everything, but it's completed, and the poor thing has had an upgrade of, it's now got 72 depth charges, it's still got its torpedo tubes, its quad torpedo tubes with 8 torpedoes. It's now got 4 to 13.2mm guns, and still got 37 of those lovely 25 mils. And yeah, the reality is the Akizukis were supposed to be escorts to carrier battle groups. They were supposed to have enough torpedoes to deter enemy cruisers from trying to attack them, have enough firepower to defend them against air attacks, and basically be the go everywhere, support everything. The Fletchers are the utility, do everything, twice over ships. And the trouble is, the Akizukis were never built in enough numbers to be useful. The Fletchers were built in enough numbers to overwhelm. I don't think it was even good enough for the numbers it was going to face. Well, bros, King Jong-un names... I have no idea, Walter Bros. That one has... Suggests if he... Oh, he's named her as his successor. Oh, cute. Depending on who you're reading. Some say he has, some say he hasn't. Well, she's the only known child. He hasn't got any sons as far as we know. Oh. No, he hasn't got any sons he openly admits to having. Let me clarify that. I'm just looking at my own notes on him. Yes, I do have notes on Kim Jong-un, but I haven't taught North Korea in a long time, so I haven't bothered to look at these recently, because, believe it or not, North Korea doesn't come up as one of the options when I'm talking about navies that often, so I only look at my notes about once or twice a year when it comes to them. And he does acknowledge his elder sons. He basically seems to consider them idiots. So yeah, basically his only option of a successor is his daughter or his sister. So, which one does he consider less of a threat at the moment? Probably his daughter. Nice, Aaron. What kept the Type 17B, Type 17G, Type 17K U-boats from being part of the scuttling? Well, there were only 7 uncompleted. And they were scuttled. 2 at Cuxhaven, as said. Already talked about that. And both the ones allocated to the UK and US were salvaged after Potsdam and scrapped. The Americans preferred to play with their Type 21s. They had a couple of those they played with. The Royal Navy did play with one of theirs. It was called HMS Meteorite, and they tested her out. But they were already been working on their own ideas, and they built the Explorer class, as I've talked about before. The British had their own ideas. But Meteorite herself doesn't really last that long in Royal Navy service, and she is decommissioned by September 1949. And in fact, they pretty much hated her. Basically, there aren't enough to do a lot of testing with, is the answer. Then the usefulness of the steel didn't outweigh the value of the data gain. Not at that point, although there have been people who have considered trying to use the steel. I mean, there are a lot of people who try and go, well, this is pre-nuclear steel. It was pre-atomic steel, we can use this steel for things. And they go, okay, yes, but it's technically under the diplomatic protection of the British, the Americans, and the Russians. Yes. You have to get all 3 governments to sign off on your salvage. Now, I would say at the moment, all 3 governments are kind of short of cash for various reasons, so they probably would agree to it. But also, all 3 governments like winding up each other, so whoever you get to agree first, the others will probably say no out of point of honor because they agree. Because the one who agreed first. It's fun. Yeah, he is equally opportunity to be annoying. Anyway, with that being said, there don't appear to be any more questions coming in. And, well, I could see if someone actually wants to take the poodle to bed. I could. I could let him actually go and see if it's bedtime yet. But at the moment, he's with his papa. So what I will say to you all is thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I know it's not quite as long as the normal one. Oh, there's another question going. Quickly answer that one before I go. Clarke, which of World War II sub-design lineage best sets you up for the best post-war service fleet further expanded? The one which is the longest lineage is the Royal Navy's U class, which leads up to which you can trace the lineage all the way along to the O class, because it goes the U's, the V's, the A's, and then all the way up to the O's. That's the longest running lineage you can find of any of the pre-World War II boats, but that's about it. And most of the others have such a broken lineage because of various reasons. They stopped producing boats. They restart again. I know. That answers the questions. Thank you very much for watching, and see you Sunday for Brew Ships. There will be a premiere tomorrow evening. There'll be a premiere Saturday. The premiere Saturday, I haven't yet decided on which one's going to be uploaded. I've recorded 3. I'll see which one uploads. Thank you very much for watching. The premiere tomorrow evening will be the one about these. So it will be the American naval theorists selling America on navies. It's a good video. What else we got coming up? go to the right button. Let's see, what else we got coming up? Next week we have the rise of the Chinese Navy, which is going to be fun. And then the week after that we have how Japan intimidated Empire with their torpedo boats. Basically, you might notice I'm going a pattern of pre-World War I, World War I, 1920s and 30s, World War II, Cold War, post-Cold War, and then back again. And that's roughly what I've tried to keep to as a rough pattern. So we're back to pre-World War I with the Japanese torpedo boats at the end of February. And then we go to Adriatic Mortal Combat, German resurgence and the interwar period, the French Navy of World War II, or what they were planning to be the French Navy of World War II. The Cold War, the USN goes forth to the world, and the post-Cold War, Horizon Frigate Project, and the rise of the Type 45 Daring class. Seemed like a good, interesting one to get into. It's an interesting one to look at for the Royal Navy. I don't know. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and take care. If you liked the video, please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel go. Thank you.